Good evening, Ansteorran. I'm Lord Ryan Savage, also known as Captain Savage, coming to you in the year of the plague, Anno Domini 55. I am your current Kingdom Thrown Weapons Marshal, and I come here with a challenge. The Throw at Home challenge. What I need you to do is get 900 axes and knives thrown. I know that sounds like a lot, but what else are you going to do? Stay at home? How this is going to work is each time you go out and throw, you're going to throw 30 rounds of 3 axes, followed by 30 rounds of 3 knives from one rotation. You're going to mark how many of those you got to stick in each round. And I would also like you to note any issues you had. An example of how you can keep track of this. This is a sheet I made on Excel today. This is a lot fancier than what I've been using. What I've been using basically amounts to a notebook with lines drawn in it to help me mark 30 throws of axe and knife. And I've left a space to mark any issues. That way I can mark whether my, blade was, my handle was up or down. Now that you've got your challenge, the next thing I'd like to do is go over some safety. It's the last thing that I wanted for someone that's new to this to go out and hurt themselves. First and foremost, before you start this, I want you to go and download the Thrown Weapons rules. Whenever I post this video, I will post the current link to go with it on the Ansteorran page. But first, let's talk about axes. My preferred axe is this cold steel Norse hawk. It's a tomahawk style, so the head's actually designed to be pressure fit on a taper. So as you're throwing these, it is possible for this head to pop off. Not to worry. You can actually put that back on. You can tap it back on with a hammer. You can take your other axe. You want to make sure that your axe head is firmly attached. Now, if you're throwing another style of axe that is not a tomahawk, but is instead more of a hatchet, where you've got a piece of metal that is in there, expanding it, same thing. You do want to make sure the head's attached firmly. If not, you may need to replace the handle on your hatchet. It just depends on the situation. Before you throw, you do want to make sure that there are no burrs on the handle, any rough surfaces, so that because when you throw, it is going down your hand. So you want to make sure there are no surfaces that are going to catch you, give you a splinter. For that, sandpaper is what we use to take them out. Just very basic, like 150 grit sandpaper is what I've got in my hand right now. And you'll take that and you'll take out any burrs or rough surfaces. What'll happen is when you hit your target and you don't hit with the blade, you hit with the handle, it'll rough up this surface. You also want to make sure you don't have any cracks in it. This can happen if you throw at the target wrong and it hits just right. It can also happen if you hit your axe with another axe. So if you're just starting out, don't be afraid to just throw one at a time to save your handles. This one I do need to replace because I did sink an axe right into the back of it. Another common type of axe is a all metal axe. These will stick in just about anything. However, if they don't hit correctly, they can bounce back. Don't be afraid of the bounce back, but I do need to make sure that you are ready for it. With this one, we're going to make sure there are no metal burrs that are sticking out that are going to cut your hand. For that, take a file them down smooth. So file, sandpaper, your two best friends when taking care of your gear. When it comes to knives, if they're all metal, same thing, you want to make sure there are no burrs. You want to make sure it's smooth on whichever end you're throwing from. Now, if you're throwing from the blade, You want to make sure that the sides here aren't going to cut you. That was the case with this cold steel knife. I actually took a file and smoothed those down and just left the end of it sharp. Of course, by this time it's pretty old and it's probably pretty sharp, but they still stick. Or probably pretty dull, but they still stick. Alright, so some consideration before you start throwing and setting up your target. Make sure you check city ordinance. Make sure it's not an illegal thing to be throwing axes and knives in your city. You'll also want to make sure that you've got enough space behind your target to safely throw. In some instances, I've seen an axe miss the target but bounce off the top of it and go an extra 30 feet. So ideally, you want to make sure you've got enough room behind your target, say 30 feet, to do this safely. Also, if your backyard happens to back up against your neighbor, you may also let them know that you're throwing axes and knives in the backyard before you start. Some other safety tips. Please don't set this up towards the road. We don't want a missed axe going into a car that's going by. So, when you're setting up your target, the minimum distance for both axe and knife is 10 feet. So you want to make sure you actually measure that out. You can get something fancy like this. I got this at Harbor Freight. You can also use something as simple as a measuring tape. This one happens to go to 12 feet, so it's just long enough. When we set up an official range, you'll see that we use a rope to mark our 10-foot line. That's to make sure that all of the throwers can see it. Now, if you're throwing at home, what I would probably recommend is using a camp stake to mark your 10 feet, and then I would have a second camp stake so you can keep track of where you're throwing from as you dial in your one rotation. In order to equip you for this challenge, I've also created a video for creating a portable target stand and an ingrain target of my own design I've been working on. So if you don't have your own gear, that's at least a place to start. I'll include that with this challenge as well. So I hope you guys have fun getting to 900 and beyond. Hashtag #ThrowAtHome2020. If you guys happen to post your scores as you're going along or your builds, please throw that hashtag on there so we can spread the word. Thank you, Ansteorran. Have a good night.